Hello folks, welcome back. Episode 11 of The Lore of the Ring. Glad you all could join me once again. I appreciate all the feedback, all the listens, all the continued listeners, all the new listeners. Appreciate everything. Let's get right into it. The last poll I put out, the winner was WWF Fully Loaded in Your House. This pay-per-view comes to us from 1998. So that's right, this is the 25th year anniversary of this pay-per-view. And some backstory on the event. This was the inaugural Fully Loaded pay-per-view, which the WWF would run through the year 2000. And it was the only one of the In Your House pay-per-views that became an annual pay-per-view. So the In Your House pay-per-views, if you're not familiar, that model was started in 1995. It was originally pay-per-views that weren't the big four. So the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and the WWF offered them at a lower price. So the big four pay-per-views were $29.95 for pay-per-view to order those, and then the In Your House shows were just $14.95, so about half price for these. But by 1998, they were all $29.95. So the In Your House model wasn't really needed anymore, so they dropped the In Your House moniker not long after, and this pay-per-view became a regular for 3 years. This show featured 9 matches on the card, but 9 matches totaled an hour and 29 minutes and 47 seconds. That's it. That's all the action that we got on a show that was over 2 hours and 41 minutes long. So it tells you what was going on in the business at that time. I do think it's important right here to mention what this era held for the WWF. Vince Russo became the head writer for the WWF in 1997. This was done to try and change things up and present something new to the audience in an attempt to turn the tables on WCW in the ratings war. I can't argue and say that it wasn't successful. Look, it was. But looking back, it was so bad most of the time. He did not care about wrestling. He wanted Jerry Springer with some Howard Stern elements sprinkled in. Now, this era is very nostalgic for me, as I know it is for a lot of people that I know as well, but it just doesn't hold up very well. Now, I know a lot of people say I miss this era. I wish WWF would go back to the Attitude Era style, but I promise you, go back and watch enough of this era like I have recently, and you'll probably cringe more than you pop. Thankfully, Vince Russo would leave the WWF in October of 1999, but sadly, WCW would hire him, and that was a sign of the end for my favorite wrestling promotion. So, I'm going to take this time to say, Vince Russo is the worst thing to ever happen in pro wrestling. I mean that. Okay, back to this show. Let's set the mood, let's set the circumstances, paint the picture for what's going on at this time, some of the feuds and storylines. So Val Venus, his issue at the time was with Yamaguchi-san. He had revealed himself to be very friendly with Yamaguchi-san's wife, and the end result of this would be the infamous choppy choppy PP bit on Monday Night Raw. So Yamaguchi-san was, Kai and Tai's manager. And the night after this show on Monday Night Raw, Yamaguchi-san brought a salami out on the entrance ramp there and chopped it, alluding to the threat that he's going to cut Val Venus's member off. The next week, August 3rd on Raw, Val and Taka Michinoku were tagging up, and they faced Dick Togo and Sho Funaki, but Taka ended up turning on Val and joining Kai and Tai because he claimed that Yamaguchi-san's wife is his sister, so he's protecting her honor. They dragged Val Venus to the back, and it appeared that Val would be chopped with a samurai sword, but John Wayne Bobbitt turned off the lights and saved him. Yep, that really happened. Anyway, Val Venus would have a match here on this show against Jeff Jarrett at Fully Loaded, and I guess this was just to get Jeff Jarrett on the card. Much more of this card is going to revolve around storylines that kind of intertwine. So at this time, DX and the Nation of Domination, they had a very famous feud going, and the leaders of each faction were at the center of it. On the June 29th Raw, a brawl broke out between the two groups, and then the next week, on July 6th, one of the most infamous skits ever aired on WTV happened when DX and comedian Jason Sensation spoofed the Nation, complete with X-Pac in blackface. Aside from the blackface, it was hilarious, And I know it doesn't age well, and blackface has never been appropriate or okay. But I do feel it's important to point out that Sean Waltman, X-Pac himself, he talked with Mark Henry beforehand, telling him he didn't feel comfortable doing it. He wanted to back out, but Henry assured him that it's okay, and they're all professionals. They know what they're doing, and it's nothing but business and part of the story. Fast forward to the July 13th Raw. The match for Fully Loaded between Triple H and The Rock was announced for the Intercontinental title. In addition to the leaders, D'Lo Brown had defeated Triple H for the European title on the July 20th Raw. So basically 6 days after losing the European title, Triple H is going to get an Intercontinental title shot. Sure, why not? But the Intercontinental title match was announced before Triple H lost the European title, so it's fine. Also involving the Nation of Domination, on the June 8th Raw, Mark Henry faced Vader, but The Undertaker interfered and attacked them both. Then, Vader was facing The Rock in a King of the Ring qualifier match, and Henry interfered to help The Rock win, so in turn, later, Vader attacked Henry in his King of the Ring qualifier match, causing him to lose to Ken Shamrock. Then at King of the Ring, they got into it again, so this is the blow-off for that feud. On the June 29th Raw, Legion of Doom 2000, LOD 2000, called out their longtime manager Paul Ellering about how he handled things over the years, and Ellering came down to the ring and brought DOA, that's Skull and 8-Ball, with him. They attacked LOD 2000, and this led to a match at Fully Loaded. Speaking of the 1997 King of the Ring, that tournament was won by Ken Shamrock. He made The Rock submit in the finals. Former King of the Ring, 1994, I believe, Owen Hart, had recently joined the Nation of Domination, which The Rock had led, and they basically had a feud that was a culmination of just that. Kind of started as a sign of respect. Hey, we're both King of the Rings, let's face off, and it kind of morphed into what we're going to get on this pay-per-view. The Nation of Domination was feuding with DX, so this was basically just a side mission for Owen Hart. One of the more, shall we say, compelling storylines, I guess, was involving Sable and Mark Marrow. So after Mark Marrow started showing jealousy of Sable's budding star power, it put a strain on their relationship, and Jackie kind of moved in and took over, becoming Marrow's valet. There was a ton of jealousy and bitterness involved, including Jackie calling Sable a skank and a hoe and calling her fat and all kinds of wild stuff on Monday Night Raw, and eventually challenging her to a bikini contest, which would take place at Fully Loaded. Then our main storyline, our main feud, involved the world title. So after Stone Cold Steve Austin won the world title from Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14, Kane would win it from Austin at King of the Ring on June 28th in a First Blood match. It's kind of funny that Kane was in a First Blood match when he's wearing a mask. Like, how's he supposed to bleed anyway? But the match would end when Taker got involved, and he was trying to hit Mankind with a chair, but inadvertently hit Austin in the face and busted him open. But Austin would win the title right back the very next night. So at June 28th, King of the Ring, Kane became the champion. June 29th on Raw, Austin challenged Kane and said, you didn't make me bleed. Will you at least give me a rematch? Kane agreed, and Kane lost the belt. So a one-day title reign for Kane. Thanks, Vince Russo. Also on that King of the Ring pay-per-view, The Undertaker and Mankind had their famous Hell in the Cell match. So these four have just kind of been intertwined for a while now, and Vince announced on the July 7th Raw that a tag match would be taking place at Fully Loaded involving these four. So then Kane and Mankind won the titles from the New Age Outlaws on the July 13th Raw. So now that match that was announced by Vince would be a title match for the tag titles. And Taker versus Austin had already been announced for SummerSlam for the WWF title, so there's another wrinkle to that storyline. So now that we're caught up on what's going on in the WWF in July of 1998, let's get to the show. The show opens with Jerry the King Lawler. He's entering a dressing room with a microphone looking for Sable. He wants her to give the fans a brief description of what she's wearing for the bikini contest later. She says she'll give him a preview and goes behind a folding screen, and we see her silhouette as she takes her shirt off, and of course, King goes nuts, no pun intended. She calls for him to take a quick peek, and he about loses it. As he exits, we get the vintage Attitude Era WWF intro video, and then our video package for the pay-per-view that shows some highlights of the Austin Taker Mankind Kane angle. Cut to the arena, and after some pyro, Jim Ross welcomes us in. He's alongside Lawler for commentary tonight in Fresno, California. 9,855 fans are on hand in the Selland Arena, which was also the home of the Fresno State Bulldogs basketball team and was also host for the 1996 Royal Rumble. Without wasting any time, Val Venus' music hits, and he's on the way to the ring for our first match. Plenty of provocative signs in the crowd, and Venus cuts a promo and acts like he's about to take his trunks off, but thank God Jeff Jarrett's music hits, and Tennessee Lee hypes Double J on the way to the ring, and they're accompanied by Southern Justice. Now, if you don't know who Southern Justice is, if that didn't ring any bells, it's Dennis Knight and Mark Canterbury, and if that still doesn't ring a bell, they're formerly known as the Godwins. So you had Phineas I. Godwin and Henry O. Godwin, and they were repackaged here. Knight would also, of course, go on to be Midian in the Ministry of Darkness later with The Undertaker, but that's who they were. This wasn't a very long-in-the-tooth gimmick for them. And also, speaking of gimmicks, Double J, he's got some cool pyro in the ring, but this is before his Don't Piss Me Off era, so no guitar, sadly. Now, as the ref shoos off Southern Justice and sends them to the back, which, by the way, was for no reason. Like, they just came out just to be sent back. Kai Entai's music hits, and you quickly remember how odd Vince McMahon and Vince Russo, how odd they were together during this era. Just all kinds of stuff going on already. The ref stops Kai Entai and sends them to the back also, but Yamaguchi-san, he sneaks past, and he's going to join JR and King on commentary. The bell sounds and the match is underway. This was actually just Val Venus' 9th match in the WWF, his first pay-per-view match, and he was 8-0 heading in. Now, commentary in this one was rough. It was bad. Instead of talking about the match, Lawler keeps asking Yamaguchi-san about his wife, and Yamaguchi-san doesn't want to talk about it and also isn't very good on the microphone in this setting, except it was funny that he kept calling Lawler Hamburger King. That was funny, but other than that, it was just bad on commentary. There's a spot in the match where Venus snaps Jarrett's neck off the top rope, and Jarrett heads, snaps back, and hits referee Tim White. Venus then goes up top, but Tennessee Lee interferes and pulls his leg. Jarrett rolls Venus up, but it's only a 2 count. So Lee gets back up on the apron, and Venus grabs Jarrett in a rear waistlock, runs him into the ropes, knocking Lee off the apron, and then rolls up Jarrett for the win. The match goes 7 minutes, 45 seconds, and Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer, he gave it 2.25 stars. I honestly don't know why or how, though. Like, that's too high. The match just wasn't good. There was no botches or anything, but it was very uneventful. There was no storytelling other than the Val Venus and Yamaguchi-san stuff, but between these two, it didn't really matter. And way too much outside fluff. Like, why did we need Kai Entai and Southern Justice to come out only to be sent back without getting involved? After the match, Val Venus grabs a microphone and he cuts a promo on Yamaguchi-san about his size and how he'll never measure up to the big Valboski. And yeah, I mentioned what we're going to be getting into in the coming weeks on Raw between these gentlemen. Something about this era that you hear a lot is that instead of TV building to the pay-per-view, it's actually backwards. It's like the pay-per-views were booked to drive people to watch Raw. Definitely feel that in this match as they continually mention what's going to happen the next night on Raw about, Val Venus. Just backwards booking by Russo. You can tell he never got or cared about the wrestling business. He's just a TV ratings whore. Next, we see the Heart's home in Calgary before we hear the Nation of Domination's music hit, and D'Lo Brown is on his way to the ring, and he's got Kama Mustafa with him, who's being called the godfather of the Nation of Domination. D'Lo is the European champion here, and we see how he won it on Raw from Triple H with the help of The Rock, but for some reason, this is a non-title match. X-Pac's music hits next, and he's set to face D'Lo, and he's bringing Chyna to the ring for backup. The match starts, and commentary puts over D'Lo's chest protector that he's been wearing, and JR says that his torn pec should have been healed weeks ago, and that at this point it's just a weapon. D'Lo dominated most of the match, but what dominated commentary was JR talking about how D'Lo was a CPA before he was a wrestler. Weird. Like, okay, why continually bring that up? X-Pac turns the tide when D'Lo Brown misses a moonsault attempt, but the Godfather hits X-Pac in the back, distracting him, and D'Lo hits the sky high and wins the match just under 8 minutes, or just under 8.5 minutes rather. Not sure why this was a non-title match if D'Lo was just going to retain the title. Like, it wouldn't have hurt him to put the title on the line here just to make the match mean a little bit more. But I enjoyed this match more than the opener. Uncle Dave did not, though. Meltzer gave it just a 1.25 stars, so blazing start to this one. For what it's worth, though, X-Pac would finally win the European title from D'Lo on the September 15th Raw. And another note, the next night on Raw, the Godfather of the Nation, the Godfather would come to the ring with 3 ladies with him, so the birth of the Godfather character was happening before our very eyes. After the match, we see Edge just randomly standing on some stairs in the crowd for no reason. We don't see him the rest of the show. And then we cut to the commentary table, and King is talking about Sable and how she had no tan lines, and he's really hyping up that bikini contest again before JR throws to backstage. It's Kevin Kelly, and Kevin's got breaking news, and he's there with Dr. Tom Pritchard, and they talk about how The Undertaker is still yet to arrive at the arena. Back to the action now, and Farouk and Scorpio are on their way to the ring. Backstage, their opponents, Terry Funk and Bradshaw, are talking to the camera, and Funk says win, lose, or draw, this is his last match in the WWF, maybe ever. He later changes it to, okay, just 6 months. He needs a 6-month sabbatical. But Bradshaw's annoyed because he didn't know this beforehand, and then they're out to the ring for the match. It is weird seeing Farouk and Bradshaw face each other here. Of course, this is pre-Acolytes days, but still kind of odd seeing that looking back. It's kind of cool, too. We get some boring chants from the crowd in this one, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't bad enough to warrant those chants, but it also goes to show you how conditioned the crowds were. They didn't, Vince Russo and Vince McMahon conditioned them to not really care about wrestling matches. They wanted, trash TV. Anyway, I'm biased also. Terry Funk matches will never bore me. I'm always going to speak highly of them. And I'll tell you something else that will never bore me is seeing Scorpio hit a 450 splash for the win, and that's how this one ended. After the match, Bradshaw's furious, and he turns on Funk and lays him out. Scorpio runs down to try to save him, but he's taken out for his troubles, and then Farouk comes down, and he catches a chair shot to the back, so Bradshaw's cleaned house here. Match went 6 minutes, 51 seconds. Meltzer gave it another 1.25 stars rating. It was, it's a little low because it's got Terry Funk in it. That's what I'm going to say. It wasn't that good, though. Back to commentary table again, and once again, we're hyping Sable in the bikini contest. It's once again clear that Russo has no interest in putting on a wrestling show. Vader's out next, and he's set to face the Nation of Domination's Mark Henry. This is, if you remember that viral clip of Big E and the New Day sitting around talking, and Big E says, "You want your 5-star classics, not me. I want 2 big meaty men slapping meat." That's what this match is. But it sucked. Mark Henry was still very green at this time, and there was a very obvious botch on a body slam attempt early on, and the movesets of both guys were just so limited. Vader was also, getting up there in age. He was getting a little bit past his prime here, so it just wasn't good. The finish was just a standard power slam and then a splash from Mark Henry to get the pinfall. 5 minutes, 3 seconds, about 4 minutes too long if you ask me. 0.5 star for Meltzer, and unfortunately, it doesn't get better in the next match. But before that, we get another look at the Hart House, and then we go back to Kevin Kelly and Tom Pritchard to talk about how Taker still isn't here. Also, before the next match, randomly, Kane's music hits, and he, Mankind, and Paul Bearer are on their way to the ring. The red tent light stays on the entire time, and Paul Bearer cuts a promo about how Taker is a coward, and he knew Taker wouldn't show up. But then, the former champs, the New Age Outlaws, they're on their way to the ring. Road Dogg challenges them to a match for tomorrow night on Raw. And again, Russo's building for TV, not a pay-per-view. This is people paid to watch this, and he's trying to divert and be like, hey, don't worry about what happens here. Tune in tomorrow to see these two teams get it on for the tag titles. It's fine. A brawl breaks out before referees and Sergeant Slaughter eventually break it up and get control. And finally, it's time for our next match. We get a video package from last week's Raw showing the fight between DOA and LOD 2000. And then first out is DOA. 8 Ball and Skull, they're out. And they've got LOD's former manager Paul Ellering with them. They're riding motorcycles to the ring, looking like some cool dudes. But then LOD 2000's out, and man, even here in 1998, they are still over. Good pop for LOD. The match had decent back and forth between them until Hawk missed on a shoulder tackle into the corner post. And then the Harris twins, 8-Ball and Skull, dominated him for a while. The match is just bad, though. Not good wrestling, no heat, and way too long. Animal does finally get the tag in and cleans house, and a pin attempt on the Doomsday device is broken up. After that, Ellering gets up on the apron and distracts Animal while the ref is trying to get Hawk out of the ring. This allows the illegal member of the DOA to swap places, so we got a fresh guy in the match here. Did the old twin switcheroo, and he hits a DDT for the win on Animal. So something's weird about that. DDT at this point in 1998, DDT was no one's finisher. That's just a move at this point, used for a high spot or a transition. But they finished this match with the DDT. 8 minutes, 50 seconds, quarter star from Dave Meltzer. I have to agree, it was bad. It was bad, but it does go uphill from here. After the match, as LOD 2000 is making their way back up the entrance aisle, Vince McMahon walks past them towards the ring, and he's got the Stooges with him, Gerald Briscoe, Pat Patterson, and Commissioner Sergeant Slaughter. They follow Mr. McMahon and get in the ring, and McMahon cuts a promo about Taker not showing up and the disappointment. He says that he's not to blame. It's Austin. Austin's the one that hit him with the chair on Raw. He mentions the fine print that's on every WWF advertisement and how it says card is subject to change. And then he reads directly from the promo for tonight's show that the fans got. And it says in the fine print that when scheduled talent is unable to appear, the promoter, him, reserves the right to make a suitable substitution. And he says he's got just the guy. Substitution's already picked out to be Austin's partner if Taker no-shows, and it's the Brooklyn Brawler, a.k.a. the biggest jobber in WWF history. Brawler comes out to the ring, and he shakes hands and hugs everyone. He's fired up. He's excited to get, a chance to be Stone Cold Steve Austin's partner. Commentary says it's time to go to the Hart's house now for the dungeon match. That's right, it's a dungeon match. A match that's going to take place in the famous dungeon of Stu Hart in the Hart household. We see Owen Hart and we see Dan Severn. He's going to be the special guest referee. And then a door atop the stairs opens and Ken Shamrock walks down. He looks intense as always. And this is literally just a basement. This is more of a shoot style fight also. They're wrestling, but it's set up like a true amateur wrestling match mixed with, some bar fight aspects like throwing guys into the wood paneling walls. This was kind of cool, but also kind of hard to watch. These guys were slamming each other's heads into the walls hard. And there were moves like a German suplex, a power bomb, and more on the floor, which is just a floor. And it's got a blanket over it, looks like. No padding. Owen also there was a cool spot. Owen lifted Shamrock up and shoved his head through the ceiling tile. And then Owen locks him in the sharpshooter, but Shamrock was able to escape. Shamrock went to kick Owen, but he ducked and the kick connected with Dan Severn instead. And while Severn was down, Owen grabbed a dumbbell and hit Shamrock in the head with it. Then he put Shamrock in a crossface of sorts, kind of lackadaisical attempt on a crossface. And he took his hand, grabbed Shamrock's arm, and physically made him tap out. Severn just saw the tap as he was coming to and called for the bell, so that was the match. Went right at 5 minutes. Meltzer liked it. He gave it 3 stars. It was enjoyable. After the dungeon match, we go straight back to the arena and DX's music hits. Triple H comes out and he's got Chyna, the New Age Outlaws, and X-Pac with him. So the entire D-Generation X with Triple H. The Fink explains that this is a 2 out of 3 falls match for the Intercontinental Championship, and there's going to be a 1-minute rest period between each fall. Next, The Rock's music hits, and he's got the Nation with him, D'Lo Brown, Mark Henry, and The Godfather. Also, hot take, this is my favorite entrance theme for The Rock. It's much more laid back and just cool sounding. It just fits this character that The Rock was portraying at the time. Sergeant Slaughter, he's at ringside now, and before the match starts, he orders DX and the Nation to go to the back. JR says that only Chyna is permitted to stay because she's the only one who's a licensed manager. So keeping up kayfabe there, love it. This is the best match on the card. It's also, surprisingly enough, the first time The Rock and Triple H would face each other on a pay-per-view. These two always worked well together throughout their careers, and this is no exception. For the first fall, a lot of the action takes place outside the ring. They fought up the entranceway, all around the ring, and at one point Triple H is on the outside, and The Rock body slams him and gets back in the ring. And as the ref is talking to him, Mark Henry does a run in and hits the world's strongest splash, or just a big splash on him at ringside. Billy Gunn comes out and fights him off, but another ref comes out and sends them back to the back. Then Chyna's up on the apron arguing with referee Mike Chioda, and The Rock hits Triple H with the belt, but Triple H is able to kick out at 2. Surprisingly, the first fall doesn't happen until well after that flurry. I mean, that was a lot of action, but they held off. The Godfather also makes his way out now, but as he's walking to the ring, the New Age Outlaws run out, cut him off, and tell him to beat it. But then as Chioda is distracted by The Rock, D'Lo Brown does a run in. He climbs to the top rope, but Triple H is able to knock him off. And after Triple H is done dealing with that, that's a pretty big distraction. The Rock's able to hit a rock bottom, secure the first pinfall. The Rock takes a 1-0 lead. After the rest period, the two immediately go back outside the ring for a while, but when they get back in the ring, The Rock hits the people's elbow, so you think it's over, but Triple H is able to kick out at 2. We get a shot of D'Lo. He's still at ringside here, and he's trying to interfere, but Chyna takes care of him. As Chioda gets out of the ring to reprimand Chyna and try to break up all this nonsense mess that's going on outside, X-Pac does a run in, and he hits an X-Factor on The Rock, but Rocky's able to kick out at 2. Triple H also brings a chair into the mix now, but The Rock takes possession of it, and he hits Chioda by mistake. And while he's down, Chyna gets in the ring, hits a low blow on The Rock, and then DDTs The Rock onto a chair, and Triple H is able to get the pinfall to tie it up at 1-1. Now, I know what I said earlier about the DDT's not a finish, but when you do it on a chair, it makes it more believable, protects the move more. Now it's time for the third fall, and you guessed it, starts with the two guys brawling on the floor. Earl Hebner's come in to relieve Mike Chioda now after he took that chair shot. So a new ref. Commentary speculated about how much time is left, and I hate that. There's no clock, we don't see a clock at all. So the people in the arena have no idea how much time's left in this match. Then Triple H hits a pedigree and goes for the pin, but instead of counting, Earl Hebner taps him on the back and calls for the bell. It's over. It's a time limit draw. Now, the people in the arena had no idea what's happening. Even us watching it, if JR wasn't putting it over on commentary, have no idea what's happening because we don't know how much time's left. I hate that. That was a failure on the WWF's part. After the bell, the Nation starts attacking Triple H, but DX is quick to come to the rescue and run them off. This was a good match that deserved a better ending, in my opinion. It went the full 30-minute time limit. Dave Meltzer gave it 3.25 stars. I would probably go 3.5 or better. I liked it. It was good, but I can't argue over a half star. After the match, we go back to Kevin Kelly and Dr. Tom again, and he announced that The Undertaker has finally arrived. So it looks like our main event's going to take place as advertised. Then we see The Rock and D'Lo Brown. They're leaving the arena, and he cuts a promo on Triple H on his way out and says if Triple H wants to go again, The Rock will make him famous. We go back to the arena again, and sigh. It's time for the bikini contest. We get a video package showing Jackie and Sable cutting promos on each other on Raw, and man, they are terrible promos. Just awful. You could tell they were reading scripts. They were not trash talking each other. And we also see Jackie challenging Sable to this bikini contest. It's just bad. But after the video package, and before the bikini contest itself, Dustin Runnels is in the ring. Not as Goldust, but as Dustin Runnels. He prays for the audience for watching what's coming up, and then reminds the crowd that the Messiah is coming soon. What was that? Why? Okay. Then Lawler grabs the mic from him and just immediately goes into being a horn dog introducing the contest. Jackie's out first. She's got Marvelous Mark Merrow with her, and she's wearing one of his boxing robes to the ring. Sable's out next, and she's wearing an oversized cut-up Sable Bomb t-shirt like a dress. Jackie takes off the robe and is wearing a, I don't know how to describe it, racy red one-piece that's barely covering her, and some knee-high red boots. And she does this awkward little dance. She looks like a stripper on Grand Theft Auto Vice City in the way she's dancing. That's a very specific look, so if you're unfamiliar with the Grand Theft Auto Vice City, just throw it in on YouTube and watch how they dance. Yeah, it looks exactly like that. She also has a nip slip that, depending on who you ask, was a planned spot, wasn't a planned spot. Some say accidental, some say planned. Believe what you want there. Sable's next, and she takes off the t-shirt to reveal some black bikini bottoms, but she's wearing a crop top t-shirt. King looks like he's disappointed. He says he's confused. That's not what he saw earlier. And then she explains that Mr. McMahon paid her a visit and told her to wear something conservative. She says, well, this is Mr. McMahon's definition of conservative, but not hers, and anything can happen on live TV. She takes off the shirt to reveal black handprints covering her breast. So she's topless, but she's got black, like paint handprints or pasty-shaped handprints, I don't know what they were, covering her breast. And that's definitely the most memorable and iconic image from the show, that's for sure. Not debatable. Mero grabs the mic and says that's cheating. That's not a bikini. Mr. McMahon comes down to the ring. He gets in and makes Sable put on his sport coat to cover up, and he orders her out of the ring. Sable won by crowd reaction, but Mero said that Jackie's the real winner because Sable cheated. That's not a bikini. Who really cares? I don't know who won. It's over. Next we go backstage, and Jackie goes into Sable's dressing room, and they yell at each other for a while before JR throws to a video package for the main event. And it's showing the uneasy alliance between Austin and Taker. And it's a very well done video package. Kane's music plays and the tag champs are out first. Together. Kane, Mankind, and they're accompanied by Paul Bearer. It's kind of weird that the champions go out first, but also the world champion is in this match, so it makes sense. Undertaker's out next, so he and Austin are going to have separate entrances. And then lastly, yes, the WWF World Champion, Stone Cold Steve Austin, is out to the loudest pop of the night. It's worth noting that this is Steve Austin's first tag title match on pay-per-view since WCW Beach Blast 93. He teamed with Brian Pillman as the Hollywood Blondes, and they successfully defended their WCW tag titles against the Four Horsemen's Paul Roma and Arn Anderson. As he's on his way to the ring, Taker had left the ring, and he meets Austin face-to-face up in the aisleway. Kane and Mankind waste no time, and they attack the challengers from behind, and we've got a hot start to the match. The action is fast-paced, and the tension between Austin and Taker doesn't let up at all, as both guys flip each other off early on. Kane chokeslams Taker early on in the match, but he doesn't go for a pinfall? That was weird. Austin gets a hot tag from Taker, and he gets a huge pop as he cleans house, which includes him nearly taking Kane's head off with a chair shot behind the ref's back. As the match progresses, Taker just does not look anxious or excited at all to be involved in the match. He doesn't want to get in the match. He doesn't want to help Stone Cold. And, you know, the champs are just beating on him, and he's just standing on the apron like he doesn't want to be there. Commentary speculates that he doesn't care about this match, that he's only worried about his title match at SummerSlam. Later in the match, Austin hits a stunner on Kane, but before he can attempt a pin, Mankind gets in the ring and locks him in the mandible claw. Austin fights him off and stuns him. Meanwhile, Taker's just chilling on the apron still. Austin also, he finally crawls over, reaches for a tag, but Taker hesitates before finally tagging in. He chokeslams Kane, then he chokeslams Mankind, and then he tombstones Kane, and he gets the pinfall. New tag team champs. The match went 17.5 minutes. Meltzer gave it 2 3/4 stars. After the match, Taker would leave with both tag belts. Austin's just standing in the ring like, what's going on? And that's how the show goes off the air. Now, aftermath, Taker and Austin would honor the challenge that was laid out by the Outlaws at Fully Loaded. They would successfully defend the tag titles the next night on Raw against the New Age Outlaws. Kane and Mankind would win the titles back, though, from Taker and Austin on the August 10th Raw in a fatal 4-way tag match that also included the New Age Outlaws and D'Lo Brown teaming with The Rock. So that's Fully Loaded 98. Let's get into the awards and rating. The Shockmaster Award has to go to Dustin Runnels. I mean, the whole bikini contest is just, you know, it is what it is. It doesn't age well. Not wrestling. I'm not saying that the women didn't look incredible, but, you know, 2023 doesn't really age well. But Dustin Runnels coming out and just praying for the crowd, that was just weird. Weird. Because nothing came of that. Like, that wasn't a new gimmick for Dustin, at least not one that he had very long. If it was, and I missed it completely when I was doing my research, completely pointless. the RVD 5-star award is going to go to The Rock and Triple H. Even though there was all kinds of outside distractions and, way too many interferences, it was still a great match and far away the best thing on the card. As for my rating on this show, look, this definitely checks the nostalgia box. And I remember so much of this very vividly from watching it in 1998. But the reality is, though, it just doesn't hold up very well over time. You had short matches with limited storytelling, some very bad matches, cringy commentary, and much more that just doesn't translate to 2023. I've got to give this show a flat C rating. For what it's worth, the Wrestling Observer readers at the time gave this show 30% thumbs up, about 41% thumbs down, and about 28% thumbs in the middle. So I kind of fall in that thumbs in the middle. There were some good stuff, but it just overall wasn't great. All right. For next show, which will come to you in 2 weeks, we're back to World Championship Wrestling. Here's the poll options you'll be able to vote for in the coming days at loreofthering_ on Twitter. Also follow me at DMFrank_ on Twitter. But here's the poll options. Option 1, Beach Bash 93. This year is the 30-year anniversary of this show, and some card highlights include Dustin Rhodes versus Rick Rude in an Iron Man match, Ric Flair versus Barry Windham for the NWA Heavyweight title, and Sting and Davey Boy Smith versus Vader and Sid Vicious in a tag match. Poll option 2, the Great American Bash 88 for the 35-year anniversary. Highlights of this card include Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard of the Horsemen versus Sting and Nikita Koloff for the tag titles, Barry Windham of the Horsemen versus Dusty Rhodes for the U.S. title, and Ric Flair of the Horsemen versus Lex Luger for the NWA Heavyweight title. Poll option 3, Road Wild 1998. This is the 25th year anniversary. This card includes Juventud Guerrera versus Chris Jericho for the Cruiserweight title. There was an 8-man NWO Invitational Battle Royal. And you also had the main event of Diamond Dallas Page and Jay Leno versus Hollywood Hogan and Eric Bischoff in a tag match. Lastly, poll option 4. Since WCW was unfortunately short-lived and I don't have another anniversary that's divisible by 5, I'll just throw in one here just for fun. I'm going to throw in the last ever WCW pay-per-view, Greed, from 2001. The show included Booker T versus Rick Steiner for the U.S. title, Dustin and Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair and Jeff Jarrett in a tag match, and Scott Steiner versus Diamond Dallas Page for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. So that's it. I appreciate everyone joining me once again. Be sure to continue spreading the word, share, subscribe, give me feedback, all that. Appreciate you tuning in. Fully Loaded 1998 in your house is down for the 3 count. And so long from the Volunteer State.